Hello, I am Uday Patel and I am going to discuss my contribution to FMS project in Team 1. Starting with the main page itself, I help it set up as well as handle the programming part. Similar to main page talking about games main page, I also helped it set up and programming part as well. Furthermore, talking about the analytics page, the unique thing in our project. I did all the programming and logic while my teammate made the graphics for the page, which we'll discuss further with each function of the coding. I also help in setup of instructions and about page, and game 2 named dancing shapes was done by me. Let's discuss the coding part of the first game, starting with preload. Loads external JSON data before the setup. Array equal function checks if two arrays are equal. Setup function is used to initialize canvas, generate shapes as well as setup buttons. Also start the timer before the game. Draw function draws shapes on the canvas, displays the timer and checks if the game is over. Talking about next level function redirects the person to the next game level of the game. Go back function redirects to the main page game. Talking about generate blink shapes, this function generates shapes with blinking colors. The shapes which are generated for 3 seconds are generated with the help of this function. Next, generate gray shapes function. This function is used to generate gray shapes. Next, generate shape. This function is used to generate any type of shape. This function is a common function used to generate any type of shape, which four shapes are circle, square, triangle and pentagon. Next function, display color buttons. Display buttons for selecting colors. This function displays the four buttons when the when the 3 seconds are over and gray shapes are displayed. This function helps to display the buttons. Next, change shape color. This function is used to change the color of the shape. Next, mouse clicked handles the mouse clicks on the shapes. This function combined with the change shape color function is used to change the color of the shapes. Next, get shape vertices function returns vertices of a shape. Next, point poly checks if a point collides with polygon. Now this last two function get shapes vertices and collide point poly are used so that I can check if the shapes are not going out of the bound of the screen or not overlapping. Which is the next function, which is the is overlapping function, checks if a new shape overlays with the existing shape, so the user can't have overlapping shapes and can recognize the shapes easily. Next function is check all gray shapes colored correctly. This function checks if all the gray shapes are colored correctly. Like this function is what checks what color is filled, is it correct compared to the color shown before. Next function is update correct color count. This updates the count of correctly showed colored shapes. This is basically what handles the score. Next is calculate score. Now this is the function which calculates the score based on the correctly colored shapes. And the last function is end game function. Handles actions to be taken when the game ends, such as calculating the final score, saving the data and displaying the feedback. Now code for level 1, 2, 3 is quite similar with minor changes such as game 1 does not have time constraint and game level 2 has 30 seconds timer and game level 3 has 15-second timer. Now that we have discussed my game, let's discuss the programming of analytics page. So let's discuss the solution first. We are using JSON to store the data, and to update the data we use many techniques such as server-side deleting and saving new one, but all of them were not working properly. So at last I decided to go with a simple technique which just updates the code. It is not the best method while seeing through the safety perspective on a coding style, but right now it works. Now let's take a look at the code. Preload function preloads the JSON data and images before the setup. Setup function setups the canvas, loads background and board images, and calculates and displays average scores and improvement percentages. Next, display overall average scores displays the overall average scores of both the games. Next is update data, updates the displayed data based on the selected drop down option. Next is get selected data, retrieves the data for the selected game level from the JSON file. Next is display scores, displays the score for the selected game level along with the average score and improvement percentage. Next function is calculate average score. Calculates the average score from a given array of scores. And then the last function is calculate improvement percentages. Calculates an improvement percentage based on the first and last scores in the selected data.